If you liked the video, feel free to like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out. Thanks for watching. Thanks for stopping by. Custodes Detachment Strengths and Weaknesses. This video, we are going to look at the strengths and weaknesses of all 6 Adeptus Custodes detachments. We have our 4 Codex detachments, the Grotmus 2024 detachment Solar Spearhead, and the extra detachment released Spring 2025 Lines of the Emperor. Each of these detachments have their own strengths and weaknesses. The Custodes datasheets are powerful enough as they are. We want rules that power up those datasheets without too many hoops to jump through, or rules that do not have synergy with the datasheets. I want to quickly go over the Adeptus Custodes Army rule. This will matter for some of our detachments. The Army rule is Martial Kata. Each time a unit from your army with this ability is selected to fight, select one of the Kata stances below. We have Dakatari stance, where our melee weapons will have sustained hits 1, or we can have Rendak stance, where our melee weapons will have lethal hits. Martial Kata is a simple yet effective army rule. If the Custodes unit has the Martial Kata ability, when the unit is selected to fight, we can either choose sustained hits 1 or lethal hits. Most of, if not all of our Adeptus Custodes units, even our vehicles, have the Martial Kata ability. The only ones who do not have that Martial Kata ability are the Psychona units. They still have the Adeptus Custodes faction keyword, but they do not have the Martial Kata ability. No fancy sustained hits 1 or lethal hits for our gals. Our first detachment is the Shield Host detachment. We'll take a look at the strengths first. Our first strength is easy to use detachment rule. The Shield Host has the easiest detachment rule of all of our detachments. It is also one of the strongest. If your model has the Martial Kata ability, melee attacks either have an extra AP or sustain hits 1 or lethal hits on a 5+, an easy enough detachment rule. Shield Host has our best mortal wounds protection stratagem. We can wait until the mortal wounds have been allocated before we use Arcane Genetic Alchemy for 1 CP. Arcane Genetic Alchemy will give us a 4+ feel no pain against mortal wounds. This is the one stratagem that can be the difference between losing a unit to only losing a few models. It is also one of the very few stratagems in the game that allows us to wait until we've taken the mortal wounds before we use a stratagem. Next up is the Sticky Objective stratagem. Vigilance Eternal for 1 CP can be used by our battle line unit, the Custodian Guard, to stick an objective we control. Done in the movement phase, meaning we can use this in turn 1. If we're on objective at the end of our command phase, we'll have control that objective, then we'll have control that objective in our movement phase, and we can use our Sticky Objective stratagem. The last strength I have is Bring What You Want. Other than the Psychona units, most of these stratagems in the detachment rule work on an Adeptus Custodes unit, a great place to start off as a new Custodes player. On to some weaknesses for the Shield Host. Our first weakness is weak shooting. Even though we can use Arcutech munitions for 1 CP to give a unit sustain hits 1 or lethal hits on their ranged weapons, it is only 1 unit, not enough to make a list that much better at shooting. The Shield Host is mostly a melee detachment. We are also slow. Custodes are not known for speed. We can build a very fast Venatari or Virtus Praetor list. Shield Host itself does not have any rules such as reactive move or adding extra movement to models. No advance and charge or advance and shoot or anything like that. Last up is those damage 3 attacks, and this is more of a weakness for all of our detachments. The Shield Host nor any of our other detachments have a -1 to the incoming damage rule. As 10th edition has evolved with updates and new codex releases, more and more damage 3 attacks have been added to the game. Custodes have that 2-up save with a 4+ invulnerable. Most of these damage 3 attacks have enough AP to take us up to either a 3+ save or even our 4+ invulnerable. Every failed save will kill a Warden or a Custodian Guard with those damage 3 attacks. Next is the popular Lines of the Emperor. The strength for the Lines of the Emperor, we have the best detachment rule. Against all odds gives any Adeptus Custodes unit besides vehicles +1 to hit and wound if the unit is outside of 6 inches of friendly units. That includes our Custodes and Psychona infantry or our mounted units such as the Virtus Praetors, +1 to hit and wound in the shooting and the fight phase. Lions of the Emperor has great shooting. Our vehicles will not get the benefit from the detachment rule, but everything else does. The Guardian Spear Strength 4 AP 1 Damage 2 with +1 to wound become a real threat, as do the Virtus Praetor's Hurricane Bolters or even the Salvo Launchers. Next up is 1 CP to reset character abilities. Gilded Champion for 1 CP allows a Custodes character to use a once per game ability twice per game. It has brought new life to the Alar Shield Captain and Trajan Valoris. It is the best stratagem in the detachment. The Lines of the Emperor have more than one powerful stratagem. Fight on Death on a 4+ for non-character models and 2+ for character models, a fallback shoot and charge stratagem, as well as a reactive D6 movement stratagem. That one's a bit more situational. It is still a great stratagem when used in the right place. Build variation and fun. Besides our vehicles, the detachment rule combined with the stratagems opens up the Lines of the Emperor to build many different looking lists. One full of Alaris units, another full of Virtus Praetors or Custodian Guard. It is one of the detachments that does not require 2 or 3 Warden units in a list. Psychona units are able to get the +1 to hit and wound. Unlike most detachments, we could actually make a fun Psychona heavy list. I have seen more varied list winning tournaments in the Lines of the Emperor than any other detachment. It can build the most fun wacky lists if we choose to. Last up, we have my favorite enhancement, Ad Monte Mortis. My favorite enhancement, and it might be our best single enhancement too, Superior Creation is also very good. Ad Monte Mortis turns an Alar Shield Captain with a Castellan Axe into a kill anything in the game kind of unit. 6 attacks, hitting on a 2+, strike 12, AP2, damage 4, with sustained hits 1 or lethal hits from the army rule. +1 to hit and wound from their detachment rule, attached to some Alar's Custodians to give that Alar Shield Captain reroll wounds into vehicle, character, and monster units. A great enhancement that can really make some fun smash captains. Now for some weaknesses of the Lines of the Emperor. Traffic jams or too many units too close. The detachment rule is very powerful. We do need to be outside of 6 inches of other friendly units to be able to use it though. Pay attention to where units are placed, take our time when moving units, no sense of having an awesome +1 to hit and +1 to the wound in shooting or the melee, but no way to actually use it if the units are in a traffic jam or too close together. No mortal wounds protection. We have no rules to protect our units from mortal wounds. Although a lot of our detachments do not have mortal wounds protection, and even if they do, it is still a limited mortals protection. Then we have CP management. Lines of the Emperor has so many good stratagems, we can burn through CP very quick. We do not want to spend CP on an Overwatch or a less needed stratagem, only to not have enough CP for Gilded Champion to reset Trajan's Moment Shackle or sweeping advance of a Shield Captain on Dawn Eagle. Bad CP management can cripple a Lines of the Emperor army. Next up is the Talons of the Emperor. For the strengths of the Talons of the Emperor, we have Talon Pincer or reactive 6-inch movement. This is the best stratagem in the detachment, and the reason this was one of the strongest detachments in the Codex release. An enemy unit ends a normal advance or fallback move within 9 inches, we can move an Adeptus Custodes unit that can be infantry, vehicle, or mounted a flat 6 inches. No D6 unreliable garbage here. It also has the best protection from mortals. The detachment rule gives our units a 5+ Feel No Pain to mortals and psychic damage. We do need to be within 6 inches of a Psychotic unit to do so, but this will give us a flat 5+ Feel No Pain to mortals. Arcane Genetic Alchemy is a 4+ Feel No Pain, but we can only use it on 1 unit per phase, unlike our Talons detachment rule that can technically work on our entire army as long as we are within 6 inches of Psychona units. Another strength is Psychona unit support. Talons of the Emperor has a lot of stratagems that allows us to select 2 different units as long as one of those units is a Psychona unit to be able to select 2 units. It gives us a reason to bring large Vigilator units or other Psychona units we normally leave on the shelf. Rhinos are great in Talons of the Emperor. The Talons of the Emperor detachment did win the 2024 Warhammer Championship tournament, more of a praise for the player Folger Piles, but still something that needed a strong detachment to do. Talons of the Emperor has lost some of its power and appeal since that win in 2024. Now for some Talons weaknesses, we have damage output. Something that has been a problem with this detachment since the beginning. Only now this far into the 10th edition, fall 2025, we are feeling this even more. Custodes need to be a one and done when charging a unit. We do have a 2 CP +1 to wound stratagem. It is not enough to give Talons of the Emperor the damage it needs to compete on the top tables. reactive movement is everywhere now. The Custodes Codex was one of the early codex releases in 10th edition. Reactive movement was rare, not so much now. Players have learned to play around reactive movement a lot more as of fall 2025. Once again, like Null, Maiden, Vigil, is the lack of Psychona units. Another detachment that really feels the lack of our Psychona unit options is the Talons of the Emperor. I recently released an Alea and Vigilators deep dive. This was one of the very few units that actually feel like it has some extra power in the Talons of the Emperor. Other than the Vigilators, taking large units of Prosecutors or Witch Seekers seems like a waste of points. We use small units of Witch Seekers or Prosecutors with a few Psychona Rhinos to spread the detachment rule around, and that's about it. Next is one of our more unique detachments, the Solar Spearhead. Some strengths for the Solar Spearhead: we have Dreadnoughts. Our Dreadnoughts are actually good in this detachment. They can even become characters with enhancements. The detachment rule is also a strength. The detachment rule powers up our Custodes vehicles like no other detachment. Extra OC, reroll hits and wounds of 1, as well as more movement for our Dreadnoughts. This is a very fun detachment. Great themed stratagems. There are great stratagems to power up our vehicles. Some highlights are -1 to the wound of incoming attacks, move through terrain, advance and shoot for our vehicles, or advance, shoot and charge for the Dreadnoughts. List, look, and play different. Unlike our other detachments, we can make an all-vehicle list or a nearly all-vehicle list. Grav tanks, Dreadnoughts, or even the venerable Land Raiders are a commonplace in the Solar Spearhead. Some Solar Spearhead weaknesses: we have anti-tank. It goes without saying, enemy units or lists with lots of anti-tank are going to be a problem. We want to ram these Dreadnoughts into the midboard or into the enemy lines. If the opponent can pick up our vehicles with ease, our game plan falls apart real quick. Horde or unit heavy lists. The Dreadnoughts do not have a lot of total attacks, even when we combine the shooting and the melee. They are great for killing medium to heavy units. Large units of light infantry can bog down our Dreadnoughts, keeping them stuck in place. Secondary scoring points can be a problem with Solar Spearhead, especially if we don't build for it. Other than the Null, Maiden, Vigil, secondary scoring points can always be a Custodes weakness. It depends on how we build the list. A fact that stands out even more in the vehicle detachment: we may be tempted to fill a list full of Dreadnoughts, Grav tanks, and Land Raiders. Without units dedicated to scoring secondary points, winning games will be hard. Drop one Dreadnought for some Psychona units to score those draws like cleanse or recover assets. Let your vehicles go off to kill enemy units, while our secondary units like the Prosecutors or Witch Seekers go off to get those secondary points. Next up is the Null, Maiden, Vigil. For the strengths of the Null, Maiden, Vigil is actually the Psychona themed detachment. And why is this a strength? Over the course of all the different deep dives, I've noticed that there are actually some good rules in the detachment. For a Psychona themed detachment, it is not bad at all for rules wise. It is the lack of Psychona models that hurt the Null, Maiden, Vigil. Another strength is the Vigilators. These ladies are the backbone of actual damage output for a Psychona list. There are stratagems to boost their AP, reroll hits and wounds, or even give them stealth. A lot of ways to actually power up these great blade wielding Vigilators. On to some of the weaknesses for the Null, Maiden, Vigil. A lack of unit variation. This really hurts the detachment. If a player wants to play an all or mostly Psychona list, the Vigilators are the only real damage dealers in a Psychona army. Witch Seekers and Prosecutors, even in a unit of 10, are not much of a threat to anything medium toughness or higher. Anti-tank is a real problem. I understand why there is no support for our non-Psychona units. This is the Psychona detachment. The lack of Psychona units makes the no Custodes support a problem. A rule to help vehicles could have helped make this a more viable detachment. Why only 6 sisters and not 12 can fit inside a Land Raider is a bit silly. Then we have the detachment rule itself. For the most part in 10th edition, rules that rely on battle shock are not really that strong or unreliable. The Null, Maiden, Vigil detachment rule can handle battle shocks, some at a -1 to the roll. The problem is, other than the Vigilators, our Psychona units cannot take advantage of the unit being battle shocked, or even the Null, Maiden stratagems that rely on battle shock. Or even the Null, Maiden stratagems that rely on battle shock. We need more Psychona units. Next is a quick one, the Auric Champions. The strengths for the Auric Champions, we have a strong detachment rule. Yes, that's right, the detachment rule is actually good. +1 to wound into one target with the shooting and melee from a Custodes character unit. Into a vehicle heavy meta, this can add a lot of extra damage into a knight or dangerous vehicle monster. We also have 2 CP to reset a Warlord's once per game ability. It is no gilded champion from the lines of the Emperor. It is a strength of the detachment though. When the Codex was released, this was the only way to use Trajan's Moment Shackle twice a game. The Auric Champions' weaknesses, the awful stratagems. The Auric Champions' stratagems are the worst in all 6 detachments. Yes, even worse than the Null, Maiden, Vigil. The stratagems only target the Adeptus Custodes character models, other than one stratagem that gives 2 different Custodes character models reroll hits and wounds into vehicle monster units. The rest feel too weak to be meaningful. That is the nail in the coffin for this detachment. There is not much we can talk about if most of the rules in the detachment are near useless as a reason to take the Auric Champions. This detachment would be much better if these stratagems had dual purpose, so if you had maybe Adeptus Custodes unit had +1 to hit, but if it is Adeptus Custodes character unit, you would get +1 to hit and +1 to wound, something like that to make these stratagems a bit more powerful. We will finish the video with some final thoughts. This was not a detachment ranking video, it was more taking a look at the strengths and weaknesses of each detachment. I wanted to give an idea of how a detachment is going to play and feel during a game. All of the detachments are capable of winning games, some are more fun to play than others, or offer something different in list building. The Custodes detachments all feel somewhat unique. It is the datasheets that I feel need some work. 40 points a model for the Custodian Guard is getting really cheap. This far into 10th edition, we may have to wait until 11th edition for our datasheet updates. What are some of the strengths and weaknesses I may have missed? Throw them down in the comments. Subscribe for battle reports, list videos, and other Warhammer 40K content. Channel members gain early access and an invite to the channel Discord. As always, thanks for watching, thanks for stopping by.